Hi guys, and welcome to another edition of Discovery with me, Glory. Today, the topic I have today is one of my fave sections. So you know how I love talking about relationships. That's my ginger. Anytime I'm talking about relationships, I'm always very hyper, very excited. So today we're going to be talking about relationships one kind. I've been thinking, well, you all know I ain't married. So it's not like I'm giving, because you know how you people are. You people are very quick. If somebody's not married, to tell the person, wait until you're married before you give advice. But this time, I'm going to be talking about questions you should be asking your spouse or spouse-to-be before you get married. So I've been talking to a lot of my married friends, my friends who are engaged, my friends who are in relationships, and saying, okay, what are the most important questions to ask? Because I think after a while, like once you're getting older, or as you're getting older rather, certain things become priority and certain things become not so important. So here are my top 10 questions that I'll be asking any would-be man that wants to marry me. So really, if you're a guy, this is your expo. Okay, no. So on the most serious note, my first question is, where do you see yourself in 10 to 15 years? And I know that question is it sounds a bit boring and it's a bit naff, and it's kind of like what they ask at interviews. So where do you see yourself in 10, 15 years? So if you want to spend a lifetime with somebody, or you're planning on spending a lifetime with somebody, one of the things you should know is what sort of life do they want to live? So maybe asking that, where do you see yourself in 10 years is a bit too formal. You can just ask him, okay, so what kind of life do you want to live? What values are you basing that lifestyle on? Another good question is, where do you want to live? I have a friend, although, okay, I'm not calling his name, but he might be a bit upset that I'm mentioning this, who is currently going through a separation with his wife because she wants to live in a separate country from him. So, when they were dating, she had mentioned it, and he had mentioned that, he wanted to stay in a different country, and she had mentioned she wanted to stay in a different country. And I guess the love was shocking them. They didn't realize that after like 10 years down the line, 3 kids down the line, or 4 kids down the line, they realized that it was a big issue, and now they're living in separate countries, and it's really straining their marriage. So that's another question you have to ask yourself, or ask your spouse to be. A third question you want to ask is about finances. So really, how are we going to manage our finances? Are we going to have a joint account? Or if we're going to have separate accounts, who's going to pay for what? A very good friend of mine who is married, herself and her husband, they have this amazing system where he's in charge of the house and everything outside of the house. Then everything inside the house, she's in charge of it. So nobody can go and meet him and say, "Oga, there's no yam," or "Oga, milk has finished." That's her responsibility. Same thing, she doesn't know anything about the rent. She don't know how much the car costs. She don't know how much petrol goes into the car. She don't know nothing. Same way he doesn't know the price of yam. So they don't have a joint account, but they have various roles and responsibilities. So he takes care of school fees and things like that. But she also takes care of everything in the house. So, for example, when they recently moved house, and she was the one that took care of the furnishing and all of that, while he paid for the rent and that sort of thing. So I think it's always good. I don't think there's from what I've heard anyway, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. You have to find out what works for you as a couple. So that's another question. That's a question I would ask. So how are we going to manage our finances? Another question I think is important to ask is who is prepared to give up their job to take care of the kids should that kind of situation present itself? And I know that in today's Nigeria, it's expected that it's the woman that gives up her conventional job to stay at home, to take care of the kids. But it's probably a discussion you want to have, especially if, as a woman, that is not your priority. A guy may have been raised in a family where his mother took time off work to raise him and his siblings, and so he expects that at a certain time, the woman will have to make that decision. But you as a woman, it's not even on your radar at all. I think that's a conversation you both need to have before you actually start having kids or even settle down into a marriage. Another thing that I see is quite an issue for married couple is this issue of boys' night out and girls' night out, and the kind of friendships that you have in a marriage. So I think I would probably ask him, or you should probably ask your spouse to be, how are we going to delineate, or what sort of boundaries are we going to create for the kind of friendships we are going to keep when we get married? Because obviously if you get married, you can't say you're fashioning your friends. You can't say you won't go out with your friends. But we always have this issue where, you met your guy in the club, you guys get married, and you think he's going to be with you at home. It's very likely, unless maybe he decides that, okay, I'm done with that lifestyle, that he's going to be having a few boys' nights out. And there's nothing wrong with that in itself. It only becomes an issue when he's doing naughty things, or you are, as a woman, doing naughty things on your girl's day out. So you kind of want to, and then you don't want a situation where it's okay between both of you that, you guys go out and have some fun. And then one day you just see one picture on Bella Niger where it looks like he's dancing in a certain way with a girl, even though you know the girl. So like, what are the boundaries of friendships? What are the boundaries when he goes out? I think that's a conversation a lot of marriages, and even before you get married, that you kind of need to have. Another thing that I think is very important is religion. So obviously, if you are marrying someone who is a different religion from you, clearly you're going to have that conversation even before, as you're picking out a church or a mosque or whatever, wherever to get married. But I think even when you have within the same denomination, what church will you attend? And I think that's such a key question, because, as for me, I know the church I go to and how I love that church, and I can't just imagine any man now carrying me to a different church, especially if I already have assumptions about, another church. So that's a conversation you want to have, like, okay, what values, and I think as opposed to saying, oh, we'll go to this church or we'll go to this other church, decide what sort of values should that church have. So any church we're going to, what are the 3 things we want that church to have that is important to us as a couple or as a family? And then speaking about values, what sort of values are you going to have in your marriage? What sort of values are you going to teach your children? What are the important values you want your children to have? I think so many people wait until they start having children and start learning how to parent, and then these values are now clashing, because remember that a marriage is 2 people who have been raised quite differently coming together. So you might have some clashes here and there. So it's always important to have that discussion. But I think another one that's quite important, especially as a woman, I think, is learning when we have a fight, who will settle for us? One thing that I've always learned is, if you're dating a man, you have to date a man that somebody must be able to talk to him. If he's somebody that he's stubborn, he doesn't listen, there must be someone in his family, a friend that he always listens to. And so maybe you guys can agree that, okay, when there's a fight that we both can't handle, maybe this is the person these are the people, or these are the set of people that you are allowed to go and complain to. Especially if you're a newly married couple, you don't want to go and start telling everybody your business. So maybe have a decide before that, okay, this is the guy that you can go to. This is the only person you're allowed to go to, or this is the only woman you're allowed to go to. I think that's a valid question to have. So what about you? Did you recently get married? What sort of questions did you ask your fiancé? Are you thinking about getting married? What questions are you thinking of asking? Or what questions have you asked that you didn't get the answers? Because one thing to ask, it's another thing to get the answer that you want. So just realize that you might ask these questions and the answers that will come back may not be what you're hoping to hear, and be prepared to put in the work to, get a compromise one way or the other. Another caveat, this is not a question for you to go and use to fight. It's questions to start up a discussion. So don't now go and call him and say, so when we get married, I hope your woman is going to come and shake her booty for you in the club. I didn't send you. That's not what I sent you. These are just questions for you to use to have a conversation. I hope I've been helpful. Please don't forget that you can email me on gloria@inspiredbyglory.com. Have I missed out any questions that you think are vital? Please include them in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Inspired by Glory. Until next week, it'll be me, Gloria Dozian, on Discovery. Bye!